Balakrishna and I both had wonderful vacations because we took some time. Balakrishna went on a road trip and I just stayed at home relaxing. How about you?
There are people who are allowed to take road trips. Wow. We're in lockdown, so yeah.
In Japan, we have selective lockdowns. We've had a spike in cases, so we're shutting down the major cities voluntarily. But I think we had about 6,000 cases per day for a couple of days, which is exceptional for Japan. We were normally at about 1,000.
Okay.
That seems difficult.
Yeah.
Have you started any vaccinations yet, or?
It starts next month. Japan is doing extra testing on the vaccines and so on for the approval process here.
Yeah, of course, you have your own, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We'll have the vaccine starting next month, and I think the target is to have the majority of people vaccinated by June.
Oh, wow, okay.
Well,
that's fast.
Yeah, well, it's also about pre-orders because Japan also pre-ordered the Pfizer vaccine and the can't remember the other one, Astra something vaccine. So we actually have quite a lot of stock coming. It's more logistics of deployment.
Yeah, it's the logistics that are impressive. I mean, you know, UK started vaccinations before the end of last year, and yeah, they realized, oh, there is logistics involved, and we don't have enough people, and yeah, right.
The Pfizer one is especially problematic because of the sub-zero containment system.
Right.
Though China has a vaccine simply made out of neutralized virus cells. It's 86% effective as per tests in UAE. And that's just the same as the flu vaccine. It doesn't need anything special at all. So that's actually very quick to deploy without special equipment. I'm not sure if we'll have it here in Japan, but I know it's going to 100 countries.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are definitely will be a minority. It's not going to be widely used. They cannot produce so many. So
I understand that the transportation is just simply a nightmare. If the temperature increases even slightly, it's potentially ruined.
Right. No, and it's, you know, they have them in pizza boxes, and pizza boxes have 195 vials, and each one has 5 doses. So as soon as you take one box out of the freezer, you have to have 975 appointments for people to just get shots.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So you cannot just take it out of the freezer and then start thinking, who should I get the shot now? You know, you have one after the other very quick. So yeah. Logistics.
I guess that wouldn't be a problem in India. Even if we start giving 1,000 appointments per day, I think it'll take more than a year to complete.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'll be doing a post on this for OpenChain, but I don't really expect us to have physical events in 2021. We might have something in the second half, but honestly, I don't think we will. Right. Antitrust policy notice was showing tons of people on the line. Happy New Year. I'm just going to shut up and hand over to Balakrishna to do the work. I just wanted to say hi to everyone. I'm here in the background. So glad to have you here. We're in ISO standard. We're taking over the world. It's brilliant.
Happy New Year, everyone. And I think this is the first meeting after the ISO standard was publicly announced. And congratulations to everyone, and congratulations, Shane, especially. So welcome to our first meeting of 2021. I assume everyone would have got the Excel sheet I shared just a couple of hours ago. I'm very sorry. I think it's been a long delay from my side, but there were a lot of approval pish posh which I had to handle, and also the vacations, so it got postponed a lot. But finally, we have the sheet where we have the complete index of the topics that are present in OpenChain curriculum, as well as in LFC 191. Let me just present the screen to make it easier. Yeah, so is my screen visible?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. So these are all the topics that are covered in our OpenChain curriculum. I have not modified any titles or the subtopics. Everything is as is. And we have abundance of data present in our OpenChain curriculum already. Along with this, since LFC 191 is in public domain now, I went through the course. Of course, I did not get the slides separately. I was not sure where to find it, find the material separately out of the web-based training that's available in Linux Foundation website. But of course, I went through the training and made the list of topics. These are compliance basics for developers. Again, these are the topics exactly as is in the course. Of course, I have left out the pages which lists the self-help or the grading questionnaire that is present. But these are all the topics that is present within the course LFC 191, that is compliance basics for beginners. And both of them are really very informative in their own domains or to the audience that it is directed towards. And one more thing, of course, I'm scrolling through fast within these sheets, but since you already have the Excel sheet, you can also go through it. And in the last page, I have made one small table which refers to the common topics between both the courses. For example, in OpenChain curriculum, 1A and 1B talks about copyright, and topic 3 in LFC. Yeah, in LFC uh, course, topic 3 completely talks about copyright. So these two have.
把蜡笔找字典。
Sorry. Okay, I'll continue. And then in OpenChain curriculum, topic 1D and topic 2, they discuss about licenses. And in LFC 191, we have 1B and the content, with title 2 talks completely about licenses. Again, there are some common topics that are there. But of course, I'll come to a little more depth after this, right? And then a 6J and 4A topic here. Here, if you see further down in 6J, end-to-end compliance management, here it talks about the notices which you have to maintain in your source code files. The same thing is also discussed here in the section 4 of LFC 191. About the file notices that has to be present in the files and examples of how the file notices or the license notices within the source code has to be presented to keep the source code compliant, right? And the more and more I keep looking at these courses, I think I have skimmed through these courses, not in detail. The first time I went through the course, I went in detail, but the more and more I skim through these courses, the more I see is our OpenChain curriculum is generic in information reference material, not a training material as always stressed upon. And our LFC 191 is just enough information or training that is necessary for developers, right? So LFC 191 already satisfies our initial discussion where we were discussing on making certain topics very specific to developers, and the rest of the topic here in OpenChain curriculum, if once enhanced better, it can be put across for the legal voice or the management voice or the layman voice. But of course, both of these can already be clubbed, or the best of both worlds can be used, and we can have LFC 191 exist in the same format, but we can take out not take out, we can inherit the best details that are present in OpenChain curriculum already and add it on to here. Just my opinion. Of course, this is up for discussion. I I got this thought when I was looking through this content, right? And then in OpenChain curriculum, again, now here it will become more easier for us to see what can be segregated out, which is not necessary for the legal or management, and which is already present for the developers in the LFC 191. I hope I did not confuse you guys right now. I know I spoke something very fast. Yeah, any comments? Would you like me to repeat anything?
Could you repeat the your end conclusion of what would be next steps?
Yeah, so the next steps can be that as we see, LFC 191 is completely directed towards how a developer has to take his steps towards compliance. What should be the basic understanding of open source compliance, and how to adhere towards the open source compliance. That is not only in terms of efficient source code usage from the open source world, but also towards how to contribute efficiently, and what are the steps a developer should be informed about, right? So LFC 191 is already good enough for basic developers, but we can get more, or we can inherit more content from OpenChain curriculum to LFC 191, and it would be a good enough course already for the developers basic course, right? And in OpenChain curriculum, we can remove all the content that is already present in developers basic, and we can partition this for two voices or two audiences. That is one for anyone who would be practicing the for example, a legal professional. How much information would he need? He would need partial technical details, as well as how much of the open source rules and regulations, so the procedures that would apply on top of it. So those if we can split it into those audience, and then the final everything that is given as a gist or a conclusion, that can be taken out as those details, or those content from OpenChain curriculum can be separated out for the management audience. So this is what this is the thought that was lingering in my mind so far. So it's not a conclusion per se.
Right. So your idea is that we will end up in having three different, one for developer, one for legal, and one for management.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, if it is possible.
Okay.
And can you clarify? Hi, Sammy. Can you clarify? So when you talk about management, are you talking about management, those who execute the compliance, whatever you call them, compliance officers, or are you talking about management in terms of sort of the business people within an organization?
Yeah, so as you said, Sammy, the latter one, it's the business people who sign for the teams and sign for the projects, and the people who will be receiving the first warning if in case of non-compliance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Realize half of our COVID patients are Black.
I mean, I think I said that to you before. In our organization, we have chosen the approach that the legal folks do.
Yeah, they go through everything.
They go through everything mainly because we want to make sure that when they have an inquiry from a developer, they understand where the question might be coming from.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'll be muting one of the participants. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just said it is a slightly different approach.
Yes, I mean, your approach also makes a lot of sense. That is one another approach we had already discussed, that it's a great idea to go ahead with. Of course, while we start developing or dwelling more into the course, we can see how much of the information can be for everyone.
Probably being weird about it.
Okay.
It's bad sex, isn't it? Thanks. Right.
Just this is Yari. Do
Hello,
you
Yari.
know if the edX platform?
Sorry to interrupt, Gary. I think there is somebody on the background who's not on mute. It's difficult to hear.
Yeah, could you please mute, if you don't mind, Aris Cho?
Decompensated.
Like some radio on there.
Yeah,
Can I do it here?
I don't think I have the privileges to mute him. Shane, would you have the privileges to mute the participant?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Do I have the what?
Do you have the privileges to mute one of our participants?
要查
Oh, yes, 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 I'm sorry.
有光了，赶快睡觉，眼睛闭起来，要
Okay.
关起来。
Muted, done.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
welcome.
Yari, please go ahead.
Balakrishna, I'm just going to put you as co-host so you have the power as well. My apologies. I should have done that earlier.
Sure, no problem.
So just like question about the capabilities of edX, because now if we think that we have like, let's say 3 different tracks, let's say so, like if we have like all the, let's say, sub tracks or all the, let's say, chapters really, let's say, separate from each other, then does the tool allow that, you can like pick and, choose that, okay, I want to do, let's say, management track, and it will automatically give me the right chapters?
Yes, Yari. So that's a very
separate tracks altogether. Because I'm just thinking like maybe in the future, if we want to edit one part, do we need to do it like 3 times to each track, or is it like one-time shot?
That's actually a very good question, which I had not thought about. But yes, there's no possibility of changing the tracks within the same course. So we might have to make the edit in 3 places. So this is also something which we can think about. So yeah, we may have to think through this. And this also reminds me that I had to share this information with you. I had discussion with Flavia just before the vacations, and I think I gave the information to everyone. If not, I'll share it again. Where is it? Yeah. So this is the information that was shared to me by Flavia. If we have to, let me just make this bigger. So yeah, here it is. Our course has to be minimum 1.5 to 2 hours long. We can have multiple courses within the edX platform, but of course we cannot have one course where we can select different tracks. That's not possible. And most of our course has to be text-based, which we had already discussed in one of our previous meetings, where where most of our participants or audiences suggested that text-based is the one that is most preferred in all their companies. Even Sami was suggesting that what they did in their company, that they made it more interactive and text-based, which would be a good approach. But of course, in edX platform, we will have lesser features to animate stuff, so we have to keep that also in mind, right? And I got this very beautiful PPT from Flavia, which talks about how our edX course can be, formatted, and what are the contents that can be made available in it. And it's mandatory that we have self-test or self-evaluation questionnaire in it. But of course, in the edX platform, we cannot provide the grand final exam. We should have a final questionnaire, of course, but we cannot have them generate a, what do I say, a certificate which says you're certified in so and so. Because if at all a certificate has to be issued, it has to be issued through LF website. So people have to go back to LF and take their final exam in LF platform. pay for the certificate and get it from there. But otherwise, for the free course, without the certificate, everything shall be available in edX platform. So all those things have been mentioned here. I will share this with the team after this meeting. Right. So everything is mentioned here, and it's very beautifully outlined and completely in detail. So we have to keep this in mind while we are developing the web-based training for all the contents.
And Barkav, just so that we're clear, when I talk about the way we've taken the approach, it's actually not just purely text. It's actually quite nice that sort of, you know, you have sort of blocks, for example, and diagrams that you actively move in there because again, what you don't want is slides that are just full of text that for people to read. So it is actually no voice, but people are expected to do something. And even throughout the training, I think there was a question last time when we talked about this. It's interactive throughout, and then at the end there is a quiz, a multiple choice quiz where people have to give the answers. So it's actually, it asks you questions throughout, but you're not sort of ranked on those. It's just that to sort of make you think before you answer. And then at the end, we have a total quiz on the module.
Yes, Sammy. So it's more like a self-evaluation test, right?
Yeah, and it really has worked very well. We've received sort of very positive feedback particularly from our developers. Actually, to be honest with you, even from our legal folks. They said it was actually quite easy and quick sort of to follow and to understand. Yeah.
So that's a very useful feedback for us. And yes, as also the point comes up, we can add diagrams in this. We can embed videos in this as well. But as far as I understand, I've not really looked completely deeply into the platform. As far as I understand, from the conversation, we can make it interactive with some tiny boxes with questionnaires and stuff.
Yeah.
But having to allow them to move pictures around, I don't think that would be possible. But of course, we can have tables, we can have diagrams, and small videos or something that can run over there. Small like those pencil sketch videos, what we get for training, not the animated videos. We can have those things run. We can even embed YouTube videos of small length.
Yeah,
these are possible.
The only other comment to make, we really do have to think of the ease of maintenance of these modules, because that is something that what you don't want is, you know, we've had some feedback. Actually, we had some looking through the training about 10 million times. Believe it or not, we still had some spelling errors in some of the content. And, you know, this was reviewed by, I don't know, 10 people or so over a period of time, yet it was not spotted. And what you want is to be able to go and rectify any issues and amend very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, Simon, that was also a point which we discussed. And for this, of course, there will be a beta launch where people can check for all these corrections and all those things that has to be done. But the beta launch can be done for as much as I think at max about 10 people who can sit and review the content that is put on the edX already for the final rectification. And consider if we have to, so I was just discussing on a time period where if we have to launch this training by May or end of May, then we will have to give the content already to the team by end of March, so that they would need 2 months of time to have all the content presentable in edX platform, and they can check with us multiple times over if the content is fine or not. And it's also better if we put all the content that has to go onto edX platform in Google Pages or Google Documents, so that it's accessible for everyone. And if there are any corrections, everyone can make it on the Google Documents. and it's more easily it can be more easily communicated to each other. So these were also the discussions which we had. So they would need about 2 months time to get everything right, where there would be a lot of corrections and revisits and rectifications that has to happen for the courses. So yes, this is also a point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why the ease of updates is something that we need to consider, because obviously there is time pressure to release, and yes, we should not delay it as long as we have an avenue that even post the launch that we can actually do the updates. You don't want to change it every other week, but inevitably there might be some tweaks that you need to do once you've received wider feedback with the best will. As we had 10, 15 people looking through the training, and yet when we launched it, we still received some other feedback. That probably, when we thought about it, we thought, yeah, actually valid points.
We have a limitation there as well. Unless something very critical, we cannot have changes for up to 6 months to 12 months after the global launch.
Yeah.
So that is also a limitation. So we have to be very careful about what we are giving for the final publishing. So we have to go through a lot of corrections or anything that is before the launch itself.
And understood. We have not, we've launched over a year ago, and we have not relaunched the training again. So it will take us another 6 months probably before we do that.
Yep. That's very good then, though. So we have to follow the same approach where we have lesser changes after the public launch. So we have to be, completely confident about the content we pass on to the technical team, which they will work on launching it onto the edX platform.
Yeah.
Yes. So these are all the information which I wanted to share with everyone. Of course, I will be sharing this PDF document and much of this content which are shared to me by Flavia.
It's already been sent to the education mailing list. So.
Oh yeah, it's already been sent. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. So, any suggestions on what can be our next steps from here?
So when they are saying that you should develop the content on Google Docs, do they mean it's just a document and we write it? Do we have it as slides in PowerPoint? PowerPoint-like. So in slides, and we have it. Do they have a specific?
Just a document, just like a Word document. So just Google Doc, literally.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Because it will be visible for everyone at the same time, and the changes can be tracked there. So there's an option to track changes there, and everyone can see what changes have been done, accepted, or rejected. So it's much useful and much easier to communicate that way on the document itself, and we do not have to wait for the bi-weekly meeting for any discussions on top of the document or the data that is shared over there.
Yeah, sure. But I was just asking whether we're working on slides or just text. Okay. So if it's just text, the existing curriculum content is in slides format, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely have to convert that to text, right?
Yes. So once we start our enhancement on each subtopic, then we just put it onto the text so that we can avoid the activity of converting it to text first and then redo it.
So quick question on, I heard the topic of certification brought up, and that could be an option by the Linux Foundation. Just spinning further on that, is that something that could also be offered via the OpenChain project itself, and perhaps even have a for free certification option for conformant member companies, employees?
So yeah, that's a good question. We have had incomplete discussion about this in this group once as well. So there was a suggestion from Shane that after completion of the course, you get a badge saying OpenChain, OpenChain course completed or something as such. So there was a discussion of that, but of course about having a certificate saying OpenChain trained. This we have not had a discussion yet. Um, I think the board members and chair should be the ones who take a call on giving out the actual certificate talk, right? Shane, do you have any suggestion on this?
Sure. As soon as the document is looking good, what I'll do is I'll bring in Flavia to give a review from the education point. And then my suggestion is, you know, around March or so, I think we're going to have the Linux Foundation membership summit. And beside that, I'm planning to have an OpenChain mini summit. And it won't be held on the event platform. You don't have to register for the member summit, but we'll have a 3-hour mini summit. So my suggestion is around March, if our document is ready, we can have that as one of the central parts of the mini summit. Say, put an hour onto it, make sure everyone in the community who wants to can have a look. And after that, we hand it over to LF Education for putting online. What do you think?
Sounds great. Yeah, so yeah, we can go by this approach, and if everyone is fine, we can set March as a deadline, so that March is a deadline for having the document ready to pass it on to the technical team, so that we can have the training available on public platform by mid of this year and not postpone it further, because it's sooner the better, right? Okay, I assume everyone is happy about the March idea.
Wonderful. Thank you, Balakrishna. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Shane. So again, any suggestions on how we proceed with these topics further here, since we have the index available for the courses that is present already? How do we proceed further? Do we take up the topics voluntarily, and do we start looking into how the topics, what and where we can contribute more onto the topic? Or do we start taking the topics, converting them into doc and enhance the language as of now and add some examples? How do we proceed further?
I think we should create a table of contents of what we're trying to achieve, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll see where we go from there, right?
Because that's a great idea, Alexios.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
That's a great idea. We can start that right here in this meeting if it is possible, because we still have 30 minutes of time or 27 minutes of time.
Right, but especially if we're talking about 3 different courses for 3 different audience, right? Mm-hmm. We have to decide which goes where, what part goes where, right?
Yeah. So, yes, please go on.
Sorry. And because again, I'm not sure exactly of what we're trying there to create, would it be possible to see the corresponding LFC 191 Google Doc that they were working on when they had it, so that we know what we're trying to achieve at the end, right? Because if they also create it in a Google Doc, right? Mm-hmm. For example, I reading the instructions that Flavia have sent, they say, you should not use PowerPoint bullets. You should have complete text, paragraphs and stuff like that, right? Which is completely different from what the current curriculum is structured right now, right? So we definitely need a lot of editing work in there, right? Mm-hmm. So, if we can have the corresponding Google Doc for the created LFC 191, we could get an idea of what we're trying to, where we're trying to reach, right? Especially if we want to reuse stuff from there.
Sure, Alexios, we can try requesting LF community to provide this. I will also write an email to Flavia. Shane, if you already know whom exactly we can contact for this particular course document.
It's definitely Flavia for everything.
Okay, done. So
Okay,
I shall
that's
contact
easy.
Flavia. Yeah. So I'll contact Flavia on behalf of everyone, and then we'll just check if there's a Google document already present for the LFC course, and we can see that. But of course, there's also one more point which is up for discussion, that some people might not be happy about creating 3 courses, because it is a valid point where if at all there are more changes or more content that flows in, which has to be added to the courses, then we have to make changes in 3 different courses. So would we need one generic course uh, which talks about all the 3 roles, or all the 3 audiences, all the 3 major audiences, or do we want 3 different courses? This is also an incomplete point which we still have open from day one of our meeting.
Yeah, but I think this will. That's why I wanted to go with the table of contents approach, and then we will see. Okay, if we have a table of contents, and then this goes into the first course, or this goes to the second, this goes to all 3 and stuff. We can find out what is common and what is, and if we find that these 2 courses are exactly the same and there's only one difference, then we say okay, no need to have them indifferent. That's why I want.
Sure,
So
Alexios, makes
I
a
would
lot of
suggest
sense.
that, on the spreadsheet that you're sharing right now, we can have 3 columns or for 3 audiences, right? And put on the same curriculum, for example.
Okay, here.
3 columns on the right, and say, for audience, developers, or for audience legal, or for audience management. That was the 3 cases that we have mentioned until now, and we put an X, we need that, or no, we don't need that, or.
That's a wonderful idea. Thank you.
When we were creating the curriculum, it was, a collection of everything in there, and then each one organization who was creating their own training, they took whatever, they picked and choose whatever sections they would like, right?
Yeah. So, so you mean to say, in this document, we start jotting down who all would need what, the topics. For example, what is intellectual property? Of course, everyone would need to know the basics, of course.
I don't know. Legal should have learned it at school, right? Why do we have to teach legal about what is intellectual property? I don't know. I mean, again, it's discussion, right? It's not.
Definitely. I mean, so let me share one of my experience here. I have interacted with a lot of lawyers. For example, there are these corporate lawyers who are aware of intellectual property and everything in depth. And there are other advocates who are more into like generic issues or crime or family or some other issues, and they did not specialize on intellectual property or something. Of course, they did study that during their schooling, but after that, when they moved to corporate after their regular practice, they wanted to go through the intellectual property definitions or the understanding as per the company inheritance, right? So they went through all these courses again. So when I had discussion with these part of lawyers, I understood, yes, they would need an understanding of what we are taught with respect to intellectual property. With respect to that, I put an X over there.
Right. And like Sami mentioned earlier, that it's good that legal people know what the developers know. So
yes, that is also a point.
Common ground.
Yep. Thank you, Ari. Yes.
So let me add a bit here, Bala. This is Rajiv from Reliance Jio. I think I completely agree with you when you talk about legal people really knowing about open source or related to intellectual property. I think unless you specialized in that area and you practice in that area, only then you really know about it. Otherwise, most of them are not aware. Even the legal folks are not aware about these compliances or about even intellectual property in detail.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Rajiv, for that information. That's helpful. Yes. And coming to further open source compliance, in this probably we might have to go into subtopics for the management. So management would want to know the goals, obligations of why it must be necessary to be satisfied. But I don't think management would be interested in knowing the distribution of the modification issues of open source compliance, because that is something a developer or the project manager and the legal team would want to know. Management would as per my experience, please to correct me if I'm wrong or if I miss out on something. The business management audience would want to know what are the goals of compliance and how do we satisfy it, and how do we, avoid the pitfalls of the compliance, of non-compliance. Sorry. So this is my understanding. Hence, I would understand they wouldn't need to know much about distribution or modification. And they might want a gist of compliance programs and implementation of compliance practices, but of course not in detail as the other participants would want to know. Please do feel free to correct whenever you see something has to be corrected.
I'm just thinking a little bit loud here that like the open source compliance issues, distribution and modification, I think it might depend on the company that if the management should or should not, know about these things. Like, I don't know if it's depending on if it's some company who based on the product on open source, that might be a totally different story than some other companies.
Definitely, you're right. If it's an open source company or a company which is if it is a startup, definitely they would have to know. But when we move on to a company of a multinational scale, they would the business handlers, they wouldn't want to know. But in case of a small scale company, the technical, the business, and everything else, it's the same set of people that are involved. So I think they would go through the first two courses rather than going into a business track.
And I agree with you, Balakrishna, because I think that responsibility in a larger organization is typically delegated. So they don't need to know the details, and absolutely agree that in a small company, it's the same individual. So even though we're classifying this way, they will have different or act on different capacities. Therefore, they will do all modules.
Definitely. Thank you, Yari, for bringing up that point. That because that is something which is something which we had to discuss and have it documented, right? And yes, the key software components for open source review. Of course, everyone would want to know that. Developers and legal. Management would not be interested on how you're doing it. Of course, they would want to know what tools you're using. But yeah, and how much it costs.
I think you're giving too much work for lawyers, right?
Yeah.
You have to explain linking, right? If you say linking there, you have to explain what linking is to lawyers, right? What does a library mean? I think this is way too. I've done it in our corporate environment, and I'm not looking forward into having slides explaining what is linking.
Yeah, that's yes. You're right. They would much less lawyers would want to get those technical details or slides on what a library is and how does function is called and how it is linked and all those things. Yes, but
what is a function? Yes, right.
Yes, but of course, they would want to know how a code license would be applicable on two different packages that are interacting with each other, right? So wouldn't it be beneficial for them to have this slide available in their track?
It will definitely be beneficial for everyone to learn everything. My question is that how do you teach a lawyer about these things, right? When you have to explain what is a function, what is a compiled language, what is not,
Yeah, that's true. But in our case, at least in Bosch, we have had the advantage that our IP lawyers did their engineering first, and then they went for IP lawyer. So we did not have that complication. Yes, we did not have that complication. But yeah, in the rest of the world, it might not be the same case. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with Alexios that this might be too much for some lawyers, but then at the same time, because I've been working a lot with the lawyers as well, so depending really what they do, like some, they already know, and some, would be good to know. But for example, when I've been doing open source due diligences, sometimes I have been explaining to the legal folks what linking is and why this is an issue and why this is not an issue. But yeah, it's tough call that if everything should be for the lawyers or not. Maybe just saying legal it's quite broad,
Yeah.
area.
So actually, sorry. So actually, working on what we said that, and especially the comment that lawyers should know whatever the developers know, which would be great, right? Should we? Let me phrase it. I'm just thinking, right? Maybe we should not have training with audience, right? It's not for developers, for legal, for managers, but we describe the content, right? One is the very detailed, it has everything training. One is basic concept training. And, each one decides what they're planning to do, right? If you are a manager, you take, and you do not care and you do not have time, maybe you take only the basic concepts. If you want to learn whatever your developers know, you take the other one, right? It doesn't matter that it's for developers. Maybe we present the 3 levels or whatever, how many levels we end up with something, about the content and not about the audience.
Yeah, I yes, that actually sounds fair. So we have one training which is completely basics, which has titles and definitions of them. And then there's another training which goes into complete depth and have a final self-evaluation with a final exam.
Yeah, so maybe we can actually end up with 2, right? One is the complete full and one is the abbreviated, just, you get an idea about this, but you do not get the details. And we leave whoever wants to take whatever, right? We do not say, this is for lawyers, this is for managers, this is for developers.
Definitely. But again, when coming to the detailed course, Alexios, shouldn't we know to what extent the explanation has to be kept open to, or that is one question that's there in my mind. When we are explaining in the detailed course, should we keep it in layman terms, or do we make it very technical, or do we keep it intermediate where it is in general English with technical explanation? Because when we are developing a training, this becomes a very important question, that how much do we explain and how much is not too much?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, as always, we should strike a balance. I don't know. Again, we will have audience who know stuff and audience who do not know stuff. Either they're lawyers and have never, or they are developers who are, very junior and they're not starting and they do not know anything else except JavaScript, right? And they never heard of compilers, right? So we can have everything, right? So yeah, we should always have a balance. I don't think we can, yeah, we should, whenever we create content, we should keep in mind what the audience is and actually write a description of the audience, maybe, you know, what this is the things that you should know, and this is, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
let me just
sorry.
Let me just add here. This is Rajiv here. One, I think from the intellectual property side, if you talk about the stakeholder who are an IP lawyers, as rightly pointed out by Bala, in fact, they are again from a technical background along with a law degree, and they specializes in this particular area. So they will need to know detail about it. From the stakeholder perspective, while the normal legal people will definitely will require a basic knowledge. So one suggestion would be that I think on the question of whether we can create a detailed content or not, I think detailed content would be required where people would choose between the basic course or maybe primary or an advanced. So in the advanced section, that could be categorized into two portions, a basic and advanced, and the advanced should contain all those details. So maybe from an intellectual property lawyer, he will like to learn, you know, every detail of what is the component and what is the technicalities in it. So so from that perspective, the content could be in that direction of a very detailed one and one of the basic one, and each of the stakeholder would take it accordingly. So maybe from a legal folk, if he is a normal practicing contract lawyer who really deals with clause related to open source compliance or open source, you can say the material indemnity or warranty, he can just have a basic understanding of open source. While for an intellectual property guy who has to look into the open source compliance, he need complete detail about it. So that could be one way to look out at it.
So it's interesting. I mean, I take a very, very different view in terms of, I think these courses need to be relatively basic. I think the minute you start and go into too much detail, the scenarios are so many that you end up sort of not being able to cover everything. So I think we have to be quite careful in terms of, yes, there might be a target audience in mind, but I think the nature of the training needs to remain as basic and simple, with clear view that actually, if you need a deeper understanding or have a deeper question beyond what is being presented here, you really need to have a discussion. And that's what we typically do in our organization. We sort of give that sort of basic level of understanding, get people to think about it and to sort of think a little bit about it before they come and sort of ring the lawyer or ring the open source office specialist to sort of to discuss. That's what we need to try and achieve, because if you try and cover every single corner, you know, with the deep IP sort of understanding, the training would be 48 hours long, and even then you still won't cover all the nitty-gritty aspects and the complexity of certain scenarios. Those scenarios that are specific and where there is ambiguity, those are the ones that you want to sort of get the person to come and talk to the lawyer and have that discussion face to face to understand the details. But the basic training you need to think of it as, let's start with a basic understanding, a baseline where people have a similar basic understanding. And once you trained across your organization, you can then start to look at, okay, how can we build on that? Is it going to be another online training that sort of goes deeper into specific scenarios? We're seeing a lot of questions about specific, whether it is linking or whether it is distribution or whether it's modification. You can then look at sort of saying, we can then create an add-on module to go deeper into that specific area.
Yeah, right. So yes, I mean, you are right that if it's very difficult to cover all the corners, and the training would get extremely long if we are trying to do that. That's a very good point which you brought in. And about having a detailed training and a basic training, yes, it makes a lot of sense rather than having uh, uh, three tracks. But one point which I want to bring over there is cons- okay. First thing is we can have our first priority for the basic training, as suggested. Taking in conclusion, summarizing all the discussions we have had now, we would need one basic training, of course. So yes, we can take a basic training as higher priority now, cover all the topics that are necessary for about good 2 hours training, 1.5 to 2 hours training, and not make it much longer, and provide a basic training available on the public platform. But again, after that, if we are going to proceed for an advanced training, we need to see that if in the advanced training we need to keep the language or the explanation very uniform. And how do you keep the language or the explanation uniform if we have audiences coming from different verticals? That's something which we have to think about later. Keeping that in mind is why I had suggested a separate track for developers and a separate training for legal and separate for management. But of course, this we can think through again, we can revisit it. For now, we can make the basic training as the higher priority, and we can make things easier and simpler as suggested by everyone. And also as suggested by Sami, to keep it shorter, we go with the basic training first, and we let the companies build upon the rest of the parts where they can discuss with their specialists within their company for advanced topics. And once we have the basic in place, then we can further continue the advanced topics. I think that would also help us meet the deadline of March. Just thinking out loud right now during this discussion. That's it.
Rather a question from my side. This is Stefan speaking. Would it be possible with the course engine to have some kind of optional fork? Like, for example, just letting all management staff dive through the non-detailed section, but offering them an optional deep dive. For example, when having the point compliance benefits, the usual track would be just the not so deep stuff. But at the end of the common track, maybe a link, would you like to know more? And then just optionally forking or diving a little bit deeper into the subject. So we maybe could give every single user the individual choice of diving into the subject or not.
Yes, Stefan. So,
if it's possible.
I mean, that's not directly possible by forking it within the course. What we can do is we can provide a notice or a dialog box which pops up, which would say, if you need more details, please proceed to the advanced course in the same platform. That's all we can do with respect to the limitations on the platform.
Okay.
The reason why I suggested starting with the basic one, I think we will get quite a bit of feedback. So for example, if you have that basic training and then you have developers taking that training, you will get a lot of feedback as to what else they might want to know. You could quite easily have people complete a survey as to what else would they like to know, and then focus on, okay, so for the slightly more advanced, what should we be including? And that's something that we have done internally, where we ran survey, and I have to say and be honest, we didn't survey everyone who completed the training. We only took a sample from different parts of the organization to just get a general feedback. What else would people like us to focus on?
You're right, Sammy. Yeah, this is actually a very good idea. So we can have a basic training ready, and then based on that, we can take a call on what needs to be present in the advanced training. So this seems reasonable for me. Anyone else has any points here or anything which we need to consider further?
No, so let's start with a single column basic training and see what we put in there. And
yeah. Okay, so yes, I think we are shooting past our meeting time. Is that fine, or do we continue this in the next meeting?
I'm afraid I have to drop off. I have another meeting.
Me as well. Sorry.
That's just me.
So what I'll do is I'll create a Google document and share the link with everyone. And as per my understanding, I'll mark out all the basic topics which we can cover in the basic training, and we can continue our further discussion on the Google documents until our next meeting. Is that fine?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating and for your suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.